Hi everyone. So in this video we're going to be shading the background drapery. I think my camera is blocking my light a little bit here. Not much I can do about that. You can see a little dark spot in there. But you can see I finished my line drawing. That's all complete. I made another print. This is a glossy print. You can also of course work off your computer screen, which I recommend. But I would work from a photo now. Once your line drawing is complete and you've erased your grid, you don't want the grid to distract you from subtle transitions like in this drapery. So you might either make another print or just eliminate the grid on your Photoshop file if you're working digitally. So we're going to start with 2H. I would not go any higher than a 2B in that background drapery. Have your erasers handy. Your kneaded eraser is that little gray square. It should be in your kit. And you can knead it. So once it gets caked with graphite, if you knead it, you can kind of push the graphite back in and have a fresh eraser again. And your white eraser. This is well used, little white eraser here. Have those both handy. You can see in the background here I've erased all the grid now. So I'm coming back in. I'm starting with my 2H pencil just like we did before. And I've indicated some very light lines which you probably can't see. But there's some light lines here just as a guideline as to where these shadow shapes are coming in. So make sure your pencil's nice and sharp and there's a long graphite on that. So you can use the side and just start getting your shading in there. So this is a 2H. You're going to have a lot nicer, softer transitions if you start with a 2H, even a 4H if you want to go that route. That's going to be super soft, but don't go any higher than a 2B. Now this, really important, is reading dark over light. So if you go into that a little bit with your shading, it's okay because you're going to pull that back in later. So I'm just using my 2H now and very lightly getting that first form down. Seems to come around here. I have a light line here that shows where it goes. Again, that can is pretty dark over my drapery. Slowly building it up. You might have to revisit it later once you start shading your middle ground here, because it's hard to associate values without this value set up already. So using the side of my pencil, just tickling in this 2H. So I'm seeing a little bit of a core shadow right here coming up, and then a cast shadow in here. But it's very subtle. It's just basically texture and color or value behind your figure. And then I have this drapery coming in here. If you go over out here a little bit, don't worry about it, and I'll show you why. If you go over your border, you can take your paper and cover your drawing and then just clean that up like that. Then if you happen to have a brush to brush away your eraser stuff, that really is helpful because it keeps you from smudging your drawing. Or a crumpled up piece of paper would also work. So I'm still coming in. This is still my 2H. I think I'm going to darken this a little bit more in here. And now I'm going to start, I see the shadow from this, the cast shadow behind the robot. Again, the robot is reading dark over light. So if you go over him a little bit, it's okay. Now I have a line here. I'm afraid it's going to show in my cast shadow just to kind of indicate where the shadow goes. So I'm going to take that out because I want a nice soft shadow back there because it's pretty far away from my object. This is the cast shadow from this little guy. And you can kind of see his little ear coming up here. So the idea is you want to finish everything behind your middle ground elements before you shade any of these. You want to get that drapery done. This is still just a 2H at this point. I might not even go to 2B. I might just stick with 2H. Keep everything really soft. Back here, see a little bit of an edge here on this drapery. And a little bit of value in here. And then this is going to go a little bit darker. Again, you can come back and adjust this later if you feel you need to. Coming back down here. So there's all just shadow behind them, cast shadows. So you're not going to use the white of the paper. The white of the paper we're going to reserve for highlights. So I see another form coming in about here, where it gets a little bit darker from that cast shadow. Again, this is going to go darker still, so I'm just working it up slowly. You also might want to keep a piece of paper to cover your drawing to keep it from getting smudged. And you'll notice once you build up that ground of your 2H, the graphite is going to start blending a little nicer. It feels a little rough at first, but as you build it up, everything starts blending really well. So I'm getting all those cast shadows underneath and behind before, oops, and this is too sharp of an edge. I'm going to take that out. There's a little cast shadow right there, coming from the can. And moving back here, we have a pretty dark shape. Right here. Moving into the cast shadow from the robot. Again, I have a line here. I'm going to erase it so that this is a nice soft shadow back here. I have a pretty good idea where it's going to go. So this is my robot shadow. Be aware that these shadows have pretty distinctive shapes that kind of emulate the shape of the object. This is a robot shadow. So this is still just my 2H, slowly blending it. Back in. This is a little bit darker right here. Check the time. I'm going to see how long it takes to finish this drapery part. A little darker there. Again, you can come back and revisit this later. And if you feel you've gone over an area you don't want, you just erase it. I can see a little bit of light back here. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit darker here, just building it up slowly. Still just using 2H. Like I said, I think I'm just going to stick with 2H for this background for now. And I might come back and revisit it later with some 2B, but definitely don't go darker than a 2B back here. Back over to here. So you're doing everything behind the objects first. Again, he's dark over light. You can't see him with the glare there. He reads dark over light. So if some of my shading comes into his head a little bit, I'm not going to worry about it a whole lot. If you go over the border, again, you can just erase. So don't worry about that either, so that you don't stop. You don't want to stop here. You want to go right through, draw through on that. Otherwise it's going to feel like you stopped and the drapery stops. And then I see a little bit of a dark edge out here. Coming over to here. See kind of a swoop back here. And something else you might want to consider is darkening all your corners just a little bit, even though maybe you don't see it. Like maybe I'll just throw some value back here, even though it's kind of lit, because it'll keep your eye inside the picture plane. You kind of darken your corners just a little bit, maybe more than what you actually see. So I'm just going to throw a bunch of value, and I think I want to sharpen my pencil. Get that pencil nice and sharp. Oops. Eating my pencil. Okay. If you keep it sharp and long, you're going to have better coverage and it'll go a little faster. Sometimes you might want to rub off the excess graphite before you keep going, because it might work a little differently at first. Just gotta use it a tiny bit. So I'm just going to throw a bunch of value behind him back here. Oop, and I see a little. Now the can is light here, so I think I'm going to pull this line into this little value area here. Again, you can clean up those edges later, like so. If I want this to be a little straighter, let's do that. I see a little dark line here. Bring this up a little higher. Just describing the lit side of that can. So what you're going to be doing throughout the drawing is you're going to decide, how am I going to push these values here to make this read. This is reading very dark over light, so you don't have to worry about that value back there too much. And I'm going to throw a little bit more value out here, again to keep your eye in the picture plane. Coming back over here, I'm going to add some shading here. So I'm starting to get toward that middle ground, although you do have to finish, oops, the middle ground before you do those. You want to do all the drapery underneath and behind before you start approaching those little figures. And I'm trying to decide. This is reading dark over light, so I'm going to go ahead and throw value on that. And just throw a little bit of value back here to keep your eye in the picture plane. I'm going over the can a little bit. I don't want it to appear that I'm stopping at the can. You can always erase it later. I'm seeing these kind of horizontal marks here, so I'm just going to do that. See a little bit of a shadow here. So I'm just working my way across, looking into the lit area. So this is where you really probably want to use a little bit more of the white paper. So you can do sort of a subtle gradation back there, maybe. Or maybe I'll just pull this back out again. So you're not really committed to anything. Keep it light. I'll just do a subtle gradation back here. Okay, back over to here. Keep going here. So you get the idea. You're going to finish this back drapery. I'm going to pause this video and finish the drapery. I'll keep track of the time, and I'll post the finished drapery so that you can see what the first step is. I'm going to work on that back drapery. So I'm just using 2H back here, 2H pencil.